What if we told you that government agencies have spilled the proof of aliens on the planet? It is shocking, but it isn't far from the truth. Join us as we uncover the most compelling evidence ever recorded, from shocking UFO encounters to mysterious artifacts that defy explanation. This comprehensive list contains 30 pieces of evidence that might tell us that aliens exist. Let us get right into it. 30. The Chile's Witted UFO Encounter, 1948. We begin in 1948 in the skies over Montgomery, Alabama. Clarence Childs and John Whitted, both pilots, claimed to have witnessed a luminous body crossing their plane only to disappear into a cloud. As noted by the United States Air Force, USF officer and Project Blue Book's director Edward Ruppelt, this sighting in 1948 unduly led the Project Sign personnel to believe that UFOs were real. However, studies carried out later were quick to point this out as false. Chiles and Whitted most likely saw a meteor, a bolide to be specific.
It happened very quickly. One of the pilots thought he saw illuminated windows across the object.
The two of them watched the object rise up into the clouds for some 10 or 15 seconds, after which it fell into the swelling clouds. The two pilots were in agreement that it was a cylindrical object about 30 meters long. Philip Klass, a renowned skeptic of UFOs, accepted that the object was a craft of interplanetary origin and was fitted grossly in error. Nevertheless, Whitted and Chiles did not escape the scrutiny of well-known ufologist, physicist James E. McDonald of Arizona University, who in his late-period interviews determined that they did not observe a meteor. 29. The Ghost Rockets, 1946. Scandinavian ghost rockets, also known as ghost rockets, were UFOs in the form of rockets or missiles observed in 1946, mainly in Sweden and other neighboring countries, including Finland. The Finnish witnesses first witnessed the sightings of the ghost rockets on February 26, 1946. Reports of the flying saucers appeared in the American newspapers from May through December of 1946. UFO sightings reached their highest point on August 9th and 11th, 1946. Police and other authorities gathered tangible remains classified as ghost rockets, and radar echoes supported 200 observations. It is still not clear where the ghost rockets came from, although popular theory states that they were shot from the sky. However, in 1946, it was believed that they were most probably due to long-range tests of V-1 or V-2 missiles captured from Germany, or an early type of cruise missile due to their movements. It was thought that they had been developed at the German rocket site at Peenemünde, which was used during the Second World War. The Swedish Army then instructed the press not to report the exact location of the ghost rockets or any other information about the object's speed and direction. They concluded that such information was necessary for the nation or nations believed to be administering the test to assess them. 28. The Tunguska Event, 1908. The Tunguska event happened on June 30th, 1908, near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River in present-day Krasnoyarsk Krai, Russia. This blast flattened roughly 80 million trees in an area of 2,150 square kilometers, 830 square miles, in the sparsely inhabited East Siberian taiga. According to eyewitnesses, the number of deaths was estimated to be 3. The cause of the explosion is considered to be a meteor, a stony asteroid 50 to 60 meters in diameter, exploding in the atmosphere. The Tunguska event is still the largest impact event on the Earth in mankind's history, and an explosion of such magnitude is enough to destroy a large city. The cosmic explosion was followed by the discovery of several alien artifacts, which have since then been unexplained. Radio waves from the blast were picked up in Germany, Denmark, Croatia, the United Kingdom, Indonesia, and even Washington, D.C. In some places, it is believed the shock wave was equal to an earthquake of 5 magnitude. It was rated 8 on the Torino scale for impact hazards. In Asia and Europe, the nights of the first few days after the explosion were brighter than usual. Some reached the newspapers' headlines, and even the people of Sweden and Scotland took photos at midnight without using flashbulbs. 27. The Battle of Los Angeles, 1942. On February 24, 1942, At night, over 1440 anti-aircraft shells were fired after what was perceived to be a Japanese air attack on Los Angeles. This confusion ended the lives of 5 non-combatants, 3 of whom passed away in car accidents and the other 2 due to heart attacks. They thought that the barrage was being aimed towards an enemy force, but it was later confirmed by the Secretary of Navy Frank Knox as a false alarm during a press briefing. However, newspapers of that time posed several questions on the fact that there might have been an actual invasion by an enemy, and this was being concealed. There is still very little known about what exactly the target was, be it balloons, UFOs, birds, or because of the increased tension on Pearl Harbor. 26. The Battle of Nuremberg, 1561. We might have to go back more than 450 years for this one, but it's worth it. In a pamphlet printed in 1561, people of the city of the Holy Roman Empire of Germany, Nuremberg, saw unusual celestial bodies. Or were they UFOs? Many ufologists believe that these sightings could have been extraterrestrial spacecraft, while skeptics have argued that the phenomenon could have been an atmospheric phenomenon, such as a sundog. However, the description given in the broadsheet does not correspond to that of the natural occurrences in general. This is what the broadsheet said. In the morning of April 14, 1561, many men and women of Nuremberg saw that, in the sky, out of the sun, there was a battle between several unfamiliar objects. The large black, triangular-shaped object and the spheres fell to the ground, apparently through exhaustion accompanied by smoke. The broadsheet describes hundreds of spheres, cylinders, as well as objects of other weird shapes and forms in the sky flying helter-skelter. The woodcut illustration given as a link shows crosses, small spheres, 2 large crescents, a black spear, and cylindrical objects from which some small spheres emerged and ran across the sky at dawn. 25. The Barney and Betty Hill abduction, 1961. The famous case of alien abduction was of Barney and Betty Hill, an American couple who stated they were captured by extraterrestrials in the region of New Hampshire. It happened between the night of the 19th and 20th of September in the year 1961. This event is also referred to as the Hill abduction or the Zeta Reticuli incident, owing to 2 ufologists who linked the star map illustrated by Betty Hill to the Zeta Reticuli star system. Barney Hill stated that he could see approximately 8 to 11 human-like beings who appeared to be staring at him through the windows of the craft. All of them but one proceeded to what one would have expected to be a console on the far side of the craft. That one relayed thoughts to Barney, telling him to stay put and to continue to stare at the craft. He said the figures wore shiny black uniforms and caps. The couple stated that after the event, they experienced certain feelings and had some thoughts. Betty made sure their luggage was placed close to their back door instead of the main part of the house. Their watches stopped for good, and Barney noticed that the strap of his binoculars was worn out, though he was not aware of how that happened. Indeed, the toe portion of his dress shoes was torn off, and he checked his genitals soon after, even though nothing seemed wrong with them. The tapes and notes that Betty compiled have been deposited at the University of New Hampshire, where Betty studied. On July 5, 2011, a historical marker connected with the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources was placed at the spot where the incident was first noticed. 24. The Exeter UFO Incident, 1965. Another famous example of UFO sightings in the United States is the so-called Exeter Incident, or the Exeter Case. It happened on September 3, 1965, near Exeter in New Hampshire. The story begins with an 18-year-old man named Norman Muscarello, who was hitchhiking home at night when he saw a large, spherical, bright thing with red lights flying over a field. Exeter police officer Eugene Bertrand, who 2 women earlier harassed, claimed that they had seen a similar object in the night and went back to the site with Muscarello. And when the 2 men got to the place, they saw the mysterious object again. The craft was said to have been approximately 90 feet in diameter, with bright red lights blinking. The object hovered in the sky. It was noiseless and moved in a jerky manner, and then it was obscured by the trees. Another officer, David Hunt, also responded to the scene and stated that he, too, witnessed the strange object. Immediately, it was reported to the Pease Air Force Base, and then the U.S. Air Force investigated it under Project Blue Book, the official study of UFOs. The military later attributed the sighting to probably being from the lights of an Air Force tanker, refueling, or a commercial airplane. However, this explanation was not well received by the witnesses and the rest of the people. The sighting of the UFO in Exeter is still ranked as one of the most credible and well-documented, and continues to be the subject of most debates among the members of the UFO fraternity. 23. The Holloman Air Force Base UFO, 1964. One of the most famous cases is the 1964 UFO sighting at Holloman Air Force Base. The story behind it is very unusual, and the main people involved are service members of the United States Armed Forces. An alien paradigm was also reported to have occurred at the Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. It is reported that 3 radar stations picked up an unidentified object on May 3, 1964, approaching Holloman AFB and assuming it was coming down. According to them, a flying saucer landed at the base after hovering in the air. It was said that at this time, there were military personnel, including senior ranking officers, and there were reports that these officers and other entities came out of the craft. The incident gained wider attention when it was mentioned in the 1974 documentary UFOs episode of Twilight Zone, titled Time Element or Time and Again, Past, Present, and Future, with an introduction by Rod Serling. Some of the scenes implied that the U.S. government could have had covert contact with extraterrestrial life forms. Some UFO enthusiasts are convinced that the Holloman case was only one of the many government conspiracies. In contrast, others regard the event as a mere invention or a result of misidentification of military operations. Even though there is no concrete proof, the case of the Holloman Air Force Base UFO remains in the air and is still discussed in circles interested in UFOs. It is an episode still considered a mystery that fuels debate about the probability of interaction between human beings and alien societies. 22. The Kaikoura Lights, 1978. Kaikoura Lights are the UFO sightings that occurred in December 1978 over the Kaikoura Mountain in New Zealand's South Island. The first sighting occurred on December 21st, when the flight crew of a Safe Air loaded cargo plane that flew over New Zealand reported seeing lights surrounding their aircraft. These lights followed the plane for several minutes. They went on and off near different parts of the plane. The UFO was a massive structure with 5 white blinking lights, and witnesses said they saw discs slightly smaller than the principal structure dropping from a certain distance and then disappearing. They were also picked by the aircraft radar and air traffic control in Wellington. On December 30, 1978, an Australian television crew on a flight to Christchurch filmed unidentified lights for several minutes. Wellington Air Traffic Control reported the lights and 5 people on the flight deck saw them. Some of the lights were said to have followed the aircraft until it landed. Next, leaving the TV crew on board, the cargo plane took off once again. During the 15 minutes of its flight, a giant glowing ball was filmed off the wingtip. The TV crew recorded, scrutinized, monitored on radar, and narrated this orb. After these incidents, there were many more similar reports, which led the New Zealand Air Force to prepare a Skyhawk to investigate further sightings. Reports of the Kaikoura Lights have been sporadic since they were last reported in 2015. 21. The Kecksburg UFO Incident, 1965. A UFO event that occurred on December 9, 1965, in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, is considered one of the most mysterious and controversial incidents in the U.S. On that evening, people saw a fireball crossing the sky and heard the loud sound of a thunderstorm soon after. Woods surrounded the small town and gave the impression that the object had crashed there. Those who were lucky to witness the object described it to be a stretched acorn that could have easily been the size of a small car. Local authorities like the police and the volunteer fire department were able to contain the area until the military arrived. Some eyewitnesses of the event claimed that the object was removed by a flatbed truck along with military personnel, which sparked discussions and theories among the public. The U.S. government has time and again dismissed all the sightings as being caused by the meteor, even when telling the public to report anything unusual that takes place. However, due to the secrecy and the quick military cover-up, people thought it was an alien spacecraft or some secret Soviet creation. Since the occurrence of the event, there have been several efforts to investigate the truth behind the Kecksburg UFO and litigation concerning it. 20. The Lubbock Lights, 1951. The Lubbock Lights case that took place in 1951 is yet another one that's well documented. It happened on the night of August 25, 1951, in Lubbock, Texas. A number of professors here from Texas Tech University, such as Dr. G. Oberg, W.I. Robinson, and Dr. A.B. George, saw an aerial light formation. These lights looked like a formation of light bluish-green colored lights forming a V shape that hovered over the town in complete silence. Several other people noticed these lights in the following days, making the situation even more mysterious. These sightings were made interesting by an 18-year-old student, Carl Hart Jr., who took 5 photos arranged in a V shape on August 30th. He used these images in the newspaper, which garnered a lot of public attention. 19. The Socorro UFO Incident, 1964. The Socorro UFO incident occurred in 1964 in a town popularly known as Socorro in New Mexico, another famous incident. The event started when Constable Lonnie Zamora, a reputable policeman, was chasing a car speeding on the outskirts of the town. While focusing on the car, he spotted a bright flame and a roaring noise in the sky. Believing it could be an explosion or a crash, Zamora turned his attention and drove toward the noise. Zamora explained that when he approached the scene, he thought it was an overturned car or small structure in a ravine. But with a second look, he saw that it was something entirely different, a metallic object of oval shape on legs with some red symbols. Close to the object, he also saw something like 2 children who, avoiding his approach, vanished from the scene. As Zamora observed the object, it came out with a roaring sound and a blue flame before rising in the air with a lot of speed as it disappeared into the sky, carving black patches on the ground with marks of burnt vegetation. This event was promptly communicated to Zamora's superiors, and within a short span of time, the place was filled with local police, Air Force officers, and FBI men. 18. The Shag Harbor Incident, 1967. In 1967, the people of a small fishing village of Shag Harbor in the Nova Scotia province of Canada bore witness to an event that has since become legend. Between 11:20 p.m. and 11:30 p.m., several people saw a large round object hovering over the water. Some of the witnesses were local fishermen and members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The object was about the size of a soccer field and had 4 blinking lights. After assuming a 45-degree position, it descended to the harbor's water surface, making a hissing sound and sparking as it hit the water. The witnesses thought what they saw was a plane crash, so they reported the incident to the authorities. The RCMP arrived on the scene immediately, and a search and rescue began, which included local fishermen and Coast Guard boats. Even after a rigorous search, no wreckage of the plane, human remains, or anything that would indicate the aircraft's existence was spotted. However, what was found was a yellow, foamy substance in water, which was subsequently collected and tested, but no results were obtained. 17. The Tehran UFO Incident, 1976. The Tehran UFO incident was incredibly well documented in 1976. On the night of September 18th, when people residing in the capital of Iran complained to the local administration about strange lights in the sky. The Iranian Air Force was informed, and after cross-checking their reports with radar, 2 F-4 Phantom II interceptor jets were sent to locate the object. When this first jet went in for the attack, the aircraft's instruments failed, leaving the pilot unable to proceed with the mission. This was because the pilot was compelled to return to base. A second F-4 was then ordered aloft, and as the fighter approached the UFO, its instruments went out but only momentarily. Thus, the pilot could still see what he was experiencing. The UFO was said to be giving out bright light, which was incredibly blinding. Apparently, the object released a smaller object that immediately started approaching the F-4. In response, the pilot tried to engage with the small object by firing a missile that did not function properly. The object then moved closer, and then went around the F-4 before moving back to the bigger object. The UFO and the object also moved way out of sight at a super-fast speed. The O'Hare International Airport UFO sighting, 2006. The sighting of a UFO at Chicago's O'Hare Airport occurred on the evening of November 7, 2006, when 12 United Airlines employees and a few airport visitors reported the sudden appearance of an unidentified flying object. Nonetheless, the Federal Aviation Administration decided not to investigate the incident, saying it was a weather phenomenon since the object was not documented on the radar. The UFO was first sighted by a ramp employee who was helping United Airlines Flight 446 depart for Charlotte, North Carolina. The employee also informed the flight crew about the object that was reportedly hovering above their aircraft. Pilots, airline management, and flight mechanics also testified of having seen the UFO, while no air traffic controller was able to witness it or see it on radar. Eyewitnesses recalled the object being noiseless, black-colored, and varying in size from 6 to 24 feet in diameter. Several independent witnesses outside the airport also saw the object, and one of them described it as a disc-shaped object flying over the airport. This witness observed that the object zoomed up through the cloud cover, which left behind an open blue sky that shut immediately. John Hilkovich of the Chicago Tribune said that the disc was in sight for approximately 5 minutes, after which many United Airlines employees, such as pilots and supervisors, saw it after hearing radio messages. 15. The Aerial School Incident, 1994. Aerial School, situated in a village called Ruwa in Zimbabwe, had its share of UFO sightings in 1994. At break time, 62 children and young people aged between 6 and 12 said they saw an unidentified flying object as a large silver disc in a nearby field. The children said that the UFO had a light on it, and out of it came one or more beings with a large head, black eyes, and a thin stature dressed in tight black outfits. The children said these creatures spoke to them with their minds, telling them about the consequences of harming the environment and using electronic devices. They said their meeting with the beings lasted approximately 15 minutes, after which they got back into the UFO and it zoomed off into the sky. The students were sensitive to what had transpired, and most were scared and worried about what had happened. Despite teachers' interrogations and later questioning by a Harvard psychiatrist, Dr. John Mack, who is interested in alien kidnap stories, the children were coherent. Dr. Mack interviewed most of the children, and he considered their statements to be genuine and true despite their unusualness. The Aerial School Incident is one of the most documented cases of UFO sightings. It is well known, especially because of the many witnesses involved and their stories being almost similar. 14. The Voronezh UFO Incident, 1989. Now we move on to the Voronezh UFO incident, which was seen in 1989 in the Soviet Union. TASS, the official Soviet news agency, reported the children were playing in a city park and watching football when they saw a pinkish light in the sky. This was succeeded by the emergence of a deep red-colored round mass, approximately 3 meters in diameter. It is said that the object hovered, disappeared, and reappeared, which amazed the children. What made this sighting extraordinary was that it mentioned a three-eyed alien wearing bronze-colored boots and a disc on its chest, along with a robot getting out of the object. It had been reported that the alien had taken a 16-year-old boy away using what was described as a ray gun and released him only when the UFO left. On October 9, 1989, TASS also said that an agency correspondent had spoken to about a dozen youths who claimed to have seen a flying saucer. It is said that the head of the Voronezh Geophysical Laboratory, Dr. Silanov, employed a technique known as location to check the landing site. However, nothing credible was found. The Voronezh incident gained much public attention and became another main attraction for UFO lovers, especially when it was publicized during the Soviet Union's glasnost. Yet this event remains a subject of debate even if the claims made are extraordinary. People raise questions concerning the credibility of the witnesses and the techniques employed to confirm the sighting of the UFO. 13. The Flatwoods Monster, 1952. The Flatwoods Monster, or the Braxton County Monster, Phantom of Flatwoods, is a legendary creature reported to have appeared in Flatwoods, West Virginia, on September 12, 1952. This happened when several boys, together with a woman named Kathleen May of the town, alleged to have seen an unidentified object fly across the sky and crash into a nearby hill. Skeptical and frightened simultaneously, the group went to the location where they thought the object had crash-landed. The witnesses said that they came across this frightening beast as they got nearer to the locality. The apparition was said to stand about 10 feet tall and was human-like in form. It had bright eyes and a red spade-shaped head, like a hood, Its body was covered in what seemed like green metal-like skin, and in addition, it was hissing and emanating a nauseating green gas that made some of the witnesses throw up. It was a brief visual that created an unforgettable experience for those who witnessed it. The Flatwoods monster was an immediate success, and the press from both local and other states reported the story. The U.S. Air Force even investigated the sighting as part of Project Blue Book, an official study into UFO sightings. Skeptics have since pointed out that the monster was probably an owl resting on a branch with light eyes, which were probably caused by the fear, the trees, and the light. 12. The Westall UFO Incident, 1966. The Westall UFO event was held on April 6, 1966, in the suburb of Clayton South in Melbourne at the Westall High School. At about 11 a.m., over 200 students and teachers observed an unidentified flying object in the sky. The object was either silver or gray, disc-shaped, and of a size twice the length of a car flying quietly in the sky. It then landed and hovered above a paddock called the Grange. People who observed the object said that the object had a dome-shaped structure on top and flouted aerodynamic norms of flight. Some reports even spoke of other objects that were smaller, but with a similar shape to that of the larger object. After being sighted for several minutes, the object was said to have alighted on the paddock, and when it descended, it left behind a circular impression on the grass. It exploded upwards and out of view, and the spectators were left in amazement. After the sighting, it was reported that military personnel and other officials arrived at the scene and proceeded to block off the area, telling the witnesses not to discuss what they had witnessed. A few students mentioned that being pressured into submission, their teachers never dared to speak out. In contrast, others pointed out that the landing site was immediately concealed and all signs of the event erased. Even though the incident was kept secret, it received much attention from the media, and several articles about the sightings were published in local newspapers. Since this event happened, many theories and speculations have been forwarded regarding the Westall UFO incident. Some think it was a military test platform, while some are convinced it was an ET spaceship. Some people attributed it to mass hysteria or a floating weather balloon. However, the number of witnesses and the similarity in the stories make the Westall UFO incident a mystery that has not been solved until now. 11. The Hudson Valley UFO Sightings, 1982 to 1984. The Hudson Valley sightings of 1982 to 1984 started on New Year's Eve of 1982, when several people in the Hudson Valley region of New York claimed to have seen a giant UFO in midair. For the next 2 years, over 5,000 inhabitants of the district shared similar stories, thus sparking a UFO craze in the region. The witnesses described the object as huge, with some estimating the size to be as big as a football field. It operated often at low altitudes, and most of the time, it was slow and extremely quiet, and sometimes it flew low over the ground. The craft was often witnessed at nighttime, bright lights arranged either in V formation or circular manner. The sightings typically happened near the highways, leading to jams because drivers stopped their cars to watch the odd object. The similarity between the report's density and the descriptions made the Hudson Valley sighting stand out. The local authorities and the media paid attention to the reports, and the case was widely discussed in newspapers and on TV. Other investigators, like other UFO researchers, tried to ascertain what the object was, but no conclusive results were discovered. Some skeptics claimed the sightings could be due to a small aircraft formation. Still, many witnesses, including pilots and police officers, dismissed this, stating that the object they saw was far more significant and did not move like an aircraft could. 10. The Belgium UFO Wave, 1989 to 90. The wave started on the night of 29th of November, 1989, when several people all over Belgium claimed to have seen large triangular-shaped objects flying in the sky. These objects were said to emit bright lights at the four corners and a red flashing light in the middle. Unlike traditional flying objects, these things moved as if they were flying machines, which could hover, accelerate suddenly, and turn instantly. These observations were recorded for several months, the most dramatic of which happened on March 30th to 31st, 1990. On that night, two F-16 fighter aircraft of the Belgian Air Force were launched to intercept an unknown object that had been on the radar. The pilots could not see the object as it flickered on and off the screens and whizzed across the sky at logic-defying speeds. Data received from the radar of this event were studied, but it is impossible to give a conventional explanation of this event. The fact that the Belgian UFO wave is supported by witnesses such as police officers, military personnel, and air traffic controllers makes it even more interesting. The local Belgian Air Force also took the sightings seriously enough to launch an investigation by employing the help of a civilian UFO research group. The wave caused a stir and received wide public attention, and most people thought that the objects had come from outer space. 9. The McMinnville UFO photographs, 1950. Often referred to as the McMinnville UFO photographs, Paul and Evelyn Trent lived on their farm 9 miles southwest of McMinnville. An event narrated by astronomer William K. Hartman took place on May 11, 1950, at about 7:30 p.m. Evelyn Trent, who was returning to her farmhouse after feeding rabbits, saw a slow-moving, metallic, disc-shaped UFO coming from the northeast direction. She immediately summoned her husband, Paul, who was at home at the time of the incident. Paul also says that he saw the object and immediately returned to the house for a camera. He could take 2 pictures of the object before it zoomed off towards the west. Their account of the incident is based on the interview that the Trents gave the host, Lou Gillette of KMCM Radio, later known as KLYC, which was reported in the Oregonian newspaper on June 10, 1950. However, 2 days earlier, on June 8, 1950, the Trents gave a different account to the local McMinnville newspaper, the Telephone Register. In this report, Evelyn said that both of them viewed the object simultaneously when they were out in the backyard. They had a short conversation about the place of the camera, which was in the car at first, but then Paul recalled that it was in the house and contained the film rolls. 8. The Marfa Lights. The Marfa Lights, or the Marfa Ghost Lights, are bizarre luminous balls that have been sighted in the night sky around Marfa, Texas, for over a century. These lights have attracted people's attention and have become a worthy topic of legends and stories. People from different parts of the world come here to look at these wonders. The first reported appearances of the lights were in the 1880s, and they are primarily observed in the desert region near the small town of Marfa. They are spherical in appearance and emit light in different shades of colors, usually white, yellow, or orange, and are observed to be floating just above the horizon. The lights usually move randomly. They may fly across the sky, combine, part, or remain in one place, only to blink out of existence. They have been said to be the size of a basketball and are mainly observed at night with a clear sky. Many theories have been developed to explain its occurrence, from realistic to imaginary ones. Some theories claim that the lights are an ordinary phenomenon caused by the reflection of car headlights on roads that are quite far away or by swamp gas igniting in the air. Some people think the lights could be the so-called ball lightning, which remains the object of various discussions. Still, none of these explanations can explain other sightings before the invention of automobiles or the observed apparent intelligent movement of the lights. The Marfa lights have also inspired other folk stories that may involve UFOs, ghosts, or similar phenomena. Many researches and investigations have been conducted, but to this day, no concrete and satisfying answer has been given about the Marfa lights, thus making them even more enigmatic. Since then, the phenomenon of the Marfa lights continues to baffle everyone. Marfa has embraced the mystery by having an annual event called the Marfa Lights Festival. 7th Crop Circles. Crop circles are inexplicable figures that appear in fields, particularly at night, in crops such as wheat, barley, corn, and the like. Ironically, such coherent geometric patterns, usually circular, have elicited awe, doubt, and controversy since the inception of similar patterns that can be traced back to the late 1970s after earlier historical reports of similar occurrences. The first crop circles were circles, but the intricate patterns and shapes, symbols, and even images that look like animals have evolved over the years. Due to the coverage of these patterns, they have been a topic of much discussion over time. Crop circles are believed to be produced in various ways, and there are different theories about that. It was first believed that it was made by men. They used ropes and wooden planks to flatten the crops at nighttime. Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley came out heartily to reveal that they were behind the formation of crop circles in the 1970s as a joke. They also explained how they conducted the patterns. They used basic instruments in the process. However, some think people's hands did not make crop circles. Thus, it could be argued that crop circles are a mysterious phenomenon. These people state that the circles could have been made by aliens from space. Thus, no number of explanations could be declared conclusive, so crop circles still cause people to remain in mystery. They consist of artificial geometric patterns made on crops such as wheat, corn, and barley by creating circles and other designs. They have now become part of popular culture, being featured in books and movies, and even having a tourism value to the areas where most of them are reported to originate from, such as southern England. 6. The Arecibo Message, 1974. Some of the most vital signals that have ever been intentionally broadcasted into space were in 1974 when the transmission was sent from Puerto Rico with the help of the Arecibo radio telescope. This transmission was made on the occasion of an exceptional promotion of the telescope from its current size to a much bigger one. This communication was a pictorial one sent to M13, a globular star cluster approximately 21,000 light-years from the solar system on the edge of the Milky Way, and it contained about 300,000 stars. The broadcast was backed by an Arecibo laser megawatt, which together with a 305-meter Arecibo antenna, funneled the energy onto a small section of the sky. This led to the emission of a signal of 20 trillion watts in all directions, which can be detected by a similar-sized antenna anywhere in the galaxy. The fact that the message was in 73 lines and 23 characters, the line numbered 1,679 bits, is interesting to note because both the 73 and 23 and 1,679 are prime numbers, and this may be intended to help decode them. The messages were sent at 10 bits per second, making the entire message take under 3 minutes. These messages included the Arecibo telescope, the solar system, DNA, the human figure, and biochemical components that make up life on Earth. The possibility of getting a reply to this short message is almost impossible. Nevertheless, the experiment was beneficial in demonstrating the difficulties of transmitting a message across the vast space and culture of the human universe. 5. The WOW signal, 1977. The WOW signal is among the most interesting events in the history of SETI. It is hard to talk about it without feeling a tingling up and down your spine. The signal received on August 15, 1977, by the Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope is a strong narrowband radio signal that appeared to originate from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. The received signal exhibits characteristics that finally led the scientists to accept that it could be of extraterrestrial origin. The astronomer Jerry R. Ehman initially observed the signal, which followed the recorded data a few days after the detection. Realizing how passionate the signal was, Ehman drew a circle around the sequence 6EQUJ5 on the printout of the computer and scribbled "WOW" beside it, giving the signal its eponymous title. Various theories have been developed to explain the nature of the signal, including the natural space signal and the extraterrestrial signal. However, none of the aforementioned theories has given satisfactory answers that can explain the problem in detail. WOW. Hence, the general implication of the WOW signal is supported by the 1959 speculation of Morrison and Cocconi, two American physicists from Cornell University, that ET could choose to transmit a signal in the frequency of 1,420 megahertz, which is the frequency of the 21 centimeters spectral line of hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. Therefore, as Kip Thorne mused about how and why the natives of space would choose a frequency, intelligent usage would suggest selecting the frequency. Big Ear, part of the Ohio State University, was refocused in 1973 to join the search for intelligent life in space. SETI. WOW was detected by Big Ear when Ehman was volunteering for the experiment, in which he did a task with the aid of an IBM 1130 computer and online printer paper. The Maury Island Incident, 1947. The Maury Island incident is one of the most famous and shrouded cases of UFO sighting and among the first few reported cases in history, dated June 21, 1947, near Maury Island in Washington. The source of the story is a man called Harold Dahl, who alleges that when he, his son, and his dog were fishing in his boat, he saw 6 donut-shaped UFOs vole in midair. Dahl went on to say that one of them seemed to develop a technical problem instantly, which was melted to release molten metal on the boat, pouring them on his son and killing the dog. Dahl claimed the event to his superior, Fred Chrisman, who consequently visited the site and collected part of the odd material. The next day, Dahl was followed by a man dressed in a black suit who told him not to talk about the things he saw. This meeting is regarded as one of the first cases of the so-called Men in Black in tales about UFOs. The story was to take a different twist following the arrival of 2 soldiers from the Military Intelligence Department, Captain William Davidson and Lieutenant Frank Brown. After interviewing Dahl and Chrisman, the 2 men gathered what they considered extraterrestrial debris. Unfortunately, while returning to the base, the B-25 bomber in which both the officers were traveling met with an accident, and both of them died. As for the debris, it was supposed to be lost in the crash. The Maury Island incident has been one of the most discussed topics in the UFO world for many decades. If it's an unsolved mystery, then its relation to UFOs cannot be ruled out in this case. 3. The UFO sightings of Kenneth Arnold, 1947. The Kenneth Arnold UFO sightings, which took place on June 24, 1947, near Mount Rainier in Washington state, are considered by most as one of those events that kick-started the modern UFO sighting trend. Kenneth Arnold, a private pilot and a respected businessman of Idaho, had converted his plane into a flying saucer on June 24th and was flying his aircraft on a clear day when he claimed that he saw 9 disc-like objects flying in the sky at an enormously fast speed. Arnold was also able to estimate the speed of the objects as at least 1,200 miles per hour, which far exceeded the speed of any aircraft known to man at that time. He also pointed out that there were no signs of propellers or engines to the objects as well as wings. Others observed them moving in an uncoordinated manner, unlike ordinary flying machines. On landing, Arnold told the police and newspapers about his encounter with UFOs, which fueled public concern about UFO phenomena. Of course, it doesn't take time for media outlets to swing news in another direction. The event attracted a lot of publicity and was followed by hundreds of similar sightings of UFOs reported from different parts of the United States within the subsequent weeks. Some thought that Arnold had witnessed secret military aircraft, while others urged that he must have encountered otherworldly technology. Despite the vigorous military and other investigations, the actual cause for Arnold's sighting was never established. Kenneth Arnold's sighting is important because it took place just days before a much-publicized Roswell incident and thus contributed to the proliferation of the flying saucer mania that swept over the United States. Arnold himself continued to state the legitimacy of his sighting up to his last days on Earth. What he saw was real. It was not a matter of perception, misconception, or misidentification of objects. Second Roswell UFO incident, 1947. Speaking of the Roswell incident, we just couldn't leave it out of this list. Among all the other UFO sighting experiences, the Roswell incident of 1947 is the most famous, which stands head and shoulders above all. It was in mid-June 1947 when an unidentified object came crashing down somewhere on a ranch in New Mexico, particularly at Roswell. First, the U.S. military got a press release claiming that the Army had captured a flying disc, and, you can imagine the rest, the whole world started considering whether alien creatures were visiting us. However, within hours of making the revelation, the military was forced to withdraw it, saying it had been a weather balloon. It was cleared quickly, and the event was not mentioned again until the 1970s, when the topic became controversial and was keenly discussed. Then many authors researching UFOs and conspiracy theories began to state that the U.S. government had concealed the facts of the recovery of an alien spacecraft and its crews. Hence, the confusion was compounded by conflicting statements by various eyewitnesses, especially Mac Brazel, the rancher who discovered the debris, and several other military personnel who later came forward with stories of how they were involved in the retrieval process and the subsequent hush-up operation. Some of the witnesses told about having seen what appeared to be metallic materials that they had never seen before in their entire lives, and others spoke of small bodies that were removed from the crash site and taken to a military facility that is yet to be disclosed. After this, the Roswell incident was featured in various publications, movies, documentaries, and television series. The negative attitude of the U.S. government towards the issue, weather balloons at first, and then mysterious TOPSECRET military projects such as Project Mogul, only helped to build up the mysterious aura and grow the people's distrust. Project Mogul was a covert military project to use high-flying balloons with microphones to pick up sound waves of the Soviet nuclear blasts. However, the debris collected near Roswell was said to be from this balloon, not an alien spacecraft. However, to this day, some are quite sure that the event in Roswell was indeed an encounter with aliens. The event is a part of actual and popular UFO lore, which is referred to as evidence of a governmental conspiracy to cover up the existence of UFOs and alien life. Roswell has since then turned into a cultural reference, and the town has become the UFO capital of the world. Roswell's case became one of the most popular mysteries of the 20th century, and the desire to know the existence of other civilizations in the universe and how the authorities hide this information from people. 1. Area 51. Area 51, in the Nevada state of the USA, is one of the world's top secret and shrouded in mystery places. Also referred to as Groom Lake or Homey Airport, Area 51 is a restricted facility of the U.S. Air Force that has been surrounded by controversy, myths, rumors, and mystery for as long as anyone can remember. Although the U.S. government did not recognize the existence of the base until 2013, there have been many conspiracy theorists asserting that the base holds numerous functions, including research into space beings and the consideration of alien technology. Area 51 has been known to exist since the time of the Cold War. In the 1950s, the U.S. required an isolated and secured site to conduct experiments on new models of aircraft and destructive weapons. The location was decided because it is remote and close to other military services. Projects in addition to the early aviation data calibration concern were the formation of the U-2 spy plane and the later formation of the SR-71 Blackbird, which were important during the Cold War for reconnaissance purposes. Because of the mysterious nature of such projects, the myths and legends surrounding Area 51 have been boosted. The connection between the facility and UFOs and extraterrestrial life came to light during the late 1940s and early half of the 1950s, when a string of unidentified flying objects was sighted over the U.S. When the flying saucer crash took place in a desert in New Mexico, that is when further speculations were fueled. Some people think that the wreckage that originated in Roswell was transported to Area 51, where it was examined. After that, they believed that the government had been concealing proof of the existence of aliens from that time on. In the decades that followed, Area 51 was firmly linked to alien conspiracies. The notion of reverse engineering alien spacecraft, secret meetings with aliens, and the storage of aliens' bodies have become parts of the myth about the base. These theories were then brought to the public by whistleblowers such as Bob Lazar, who alleged that he had worked on UFOs backward in Nevada, close to Area 51 in the late 1980s. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.